Welcome to the double dividend potential of the blue economy session. Thank you for being with us. My name is Mustafa Alrawi. I'm assistant editor at the National in Abu Dhabi. I'm very pleased to be here. Today, we are joined by one of the preeminent minds when it comes to the blue economy and the oceans. Paul Holthus is the founding president and CEO of the World Ocean Council. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Mustafa. Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. When people think of the oceans, perhaps they might think of something of a resource, of a richness in the world that needs to be preserved. However, it is of immense value, not just environmentally, but economically as well. I think that the scale of it would surprise some people. And if I were allowed to kind of make the oceans the equivalent of a country, the value of the blue economy is bigger than the value of the United States, the world's largest economy. So for your work and the World Ocean Council, how do you explain, to those that might think of the oceans as being something that, we only have to protect as opposed to a resource that can be well used, if you like?
Well, there certainly is a huge economic potential in the ocean. And this is something that's been a part of human society since the very beginning of civilization, in terms of fisheries, transport, and a range of other kinds of uses. And these have increased and expanded over time and continue to increase and expand. And so it's a rich and diverse history and future potential for the ocean as an economic engine for the planet and a huge part of the global economy. And so this includes shipping. People would think of immediately, probably, so marine transport of all sorts, the energy that comes from the ocean, both fossil fuels and increasingly renewables, and we can talk a bit more about that. In the Gulf region, the desalination potential, the ocean as a resource for fresh water, the recreation and tourism aspects of the ocean, communications through submarine cable. All of these sorts of uses that are so critical, and of course then fisheries and aquaculture as a source of seafood and protein. These are all incredibly important to many national economies and different regions and the global economy overall.
So at the World Ocean Council, you're looking at these different industries that obviously create economic value, economic activity, jobs as well, but also in terms of how governments might actually manage this resource or get the best out of this resource as well. So the World Ocean Council, you're speaking to both the private sector and policymakers as well?
Right. So at the World Ocean Council, what we do uniquely is bring together these range of ocean industry operators to work together as a collective ocean business and investment community. They're all operating in that same physical three-dimensional global ocean space. And so we have created a convening place to really gather the leadership companies from those different sectors that I've mentioned, to be able to have a single voice in working on responsible and sustainable ocean economic activity, and engage then as a collective ocean business community with the governments, the UN, the NGOs, the science community, to really create that interaction amongst the key stakeholders, so that we've got a constructive, proactive engagement of the private sector with the other ocean stakeholders to think about how the business community can best lead and collaborate amongst itself, amongst the different sectors, and with those other stakeholders to ensure we've got a healthy and productive ocean moving into the future.
So the tail end of 2021 was in terms of the world, one of the biggest results was what happened at COP26 in Glasgow, the climate change meeting, when governments came together, private sector as well, to decide how to speed up our action to meet some of the targets that was very clear that we were going to miss. So when it comes to climate change, where does the ocean fit in this? And in terms of governments and the private sector, what do they have to be aware of?
Yeah, and this is really such an important time for the global community to work together and really understand and develop the role of the ocean as a part of solutions key solutions to climate change. And I'll focus on a couple of key ones, but just mention initially an important, very active effort underway by the global shipping industry to decarbonize shipping and really ensure that it's reducing its global footprint in terms of CO2 emissions. And secondly, I'll mention one of the key impacts of climate change that's so critical to coastal countries and small island states, and that is the impact of extreme weather events and sea level rise and flooding from the changing climate and a changing ocean that are impacting communities, businesses, ports, coastal infrastructure. So those are really important areas that work needs to be undertaken on. But what I'd really like to emphasize here is the role of the ocean as a solution, key part of the solutions to climate change in two ways. One is the amount of renewable energy that can come from the ocean. And most of our listeners hopefully are familiar with the rapidly rising amount of wind energy that's coming from the ocean. There's also wave energy, tidal energy from currents, from ocean thermal gradients, etc. So that's one of the key pieces that the roles that the ocean can play in addressing climate change. And most importantly, in this context, is the role of the ocean as a sink, a recipient of CO2. So the ocean is by far the largest natural system reservoir for carbon dioxide. And so this can be enhanced. If we didn't have the ocean, we would really be in trouble. It's already absorbed 50% of the carbon, excess carbon that's been emitted during the industrial age, and much of the heat that's been generated. We can enhance that with careful, responsible adjusting of the ocean's processes to increase its capacity to absorb CO2 in the deep waters through a variety of methods. And in coastal ecosystems, mangroves and seagrasses and other ecosystems near shore also have a role in what's called blue carbon. So by maintaining and preserving and enhancing the role of the oceans.
You know, the oceans being a huge sink, and where already it's absorbed a huge amount of the carbon emissions from the industrial age. But so we need to work to ensure that they are protected essentially, and they are enhanced, while at the same time looking at the opportunities.
That's right. So the ability of the ocean to serve as a sink for carbon is already taking place, but we can work with the ocean in a series of what's called nature-based solutions to enhance its role in absorbing carbon. But to be most effective in that role, the ocean needs to be healthy and productive. So overall, maintaining ecosystem functions and the health and productivity of the ocean will help us enhance its role in carbon sequestration.
And I wonder, particularly when it comes to this region where we are, the Gulf and the wider Middle East, what are the conversations that we need to have with regards to action, but also awareness, to make sure that we not only preserve this very, very valuable resource that we have, but also that we understand how we need to move forward?
Yeah, in the region there's an incredible level of use of the ocean and marine ecosystems and resources that a lot of people aren't aware of. So the most obvious use is offshore oil and gas, which most people would see as a key part of, and rightly so, a key part of the economy, with an incredible percentage of the not only the production of oil and gas occurring in the region, but also the transport, with some 30 to 50% moving out of the Gulf regularly in thousands of ship transits. But there's also, we've mentioned desalination. So by far the world's greatest concentration of desalination efforts are in the Gulf region. There's fisheries, there's aquaculture, and in fact, countries are trying to expand their fisheries and aquaculture to reduce the deficit they have in importing. They have so much of their food seafood that's imported. So there's opportunities there, in addition to the tourism and recreation activities that are increasingly a part of the Gulf region. All of these, though, cumulatively create a series of impacts on a very stressed marine ecosystem, and particularly in the Gulf, a very confined body of water. And so industries need to work together to be leading the way in ensuring that they are minimizing their impacts. and working with governments and other stakeholders, with the science community, to understand what can be done to reduce impacts, to work together to actually be a positive force for ensuring we've got a healthy ecosystem in the region, a healthy marine ecosystem in the region that can serve to support these kinds of economic activities that depend on clean waters and healthy functioning coral reefs, coastal ecosystems, etc. So that we not only have that main, the continuation of that oil and gas industry, but it's playing a role in ensuring that it's cleaning up its impacts and supporting the possibilities for fisheries, aquaculture, tourism, recreation, desalination, and other uses that the economies of the region depend on.
Paul Holthus from the World Ocean Council, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining.